Te Koto Te whānau o Aotearoa Unitarians. Te Koto nā manuhiri, no mai, higher mai. Higher mai ki tene hui topa ate atua. Te Koto, te tato katoa. Before I go further, is the sound okay in the church? Okay. My opening words are entitled, "What Part Will You Play?" What part will we play this year in the Christmas story? Are you the mother trusting your body to know what to do when the time of birth comes? Are you the father protecting your vulnerable family from unknown threats on a strange journey? Are you the innkeeper who has no room? Or will you take us in? Perhaps you are the animals who hear the child's first cry. But who will sing the songs of rejoicing for the precious babe? Who will rise up and follow the bright star of hope, even if it means a few lost sheep? What wise ones will give away their wealth and remember what to adore? And when the Holy Family must travel once again, who in this harsh land will shelter them on this silent night? Let us search our hearts for our place in the Christmas story that never ends. Let us choose again our role in the incarnation of love. This is a Sunday we usually decorate the church for Christmas Eve. I don't think that's going to happen this year, but maybe we'll be surprised. So we will listen to the song, "Deck the Halls with Boughs of Holly." And now we will light our chalice. So if somebody in the church can go light the one there. We gather together this Christmas season as fellow sojourners looking for light, for hope, for peace, and for love. We gather as people from many backgrounds, many faiths, many cultures, and many spiritual paths. But as we light this chalice, we gather as one body, looking to the Nativity for its message to all of humanity. It is a message, its message is that there is light, there is hope, there is peace, there is love. Our next song we've all heard, but if I did a quickie quiz, I doubt most of you know that it was written by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He wrote it 2 years after being widowed when his wife's dress caught fire on a candle. And his son had just been shot during the Civil War, and he was caring for him during a long convalescence. And as Christmas approached, he struggled with the idea of where was peace on earth goodwill towards men. Anybody know what the song was? No? I heard the bells on Christmas Day. The song doesn't have inclusive language, but Kate Smith was a very famous singer in America in the 1940s, much beloved and well known for her unique voice. And I thought you might like to hear it. My reading for today is brief. If I had my way, every idiot who goes around with Merry Christmas on his lips would be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. Merry Christmas? Bah humbug. You will get more from this talk if you remember having watched him at least once in your life. It's a Wonderful Life. It was released 76 years ago. And hopefully, if you haven't, this talk will inspire you to check it out. I don't consider it Christmas until I've watched It's a Wonderful Life. I ticked that off last Sunday, so for me, it's now Christmas. I don't know when it became one of my treasured Christmas traditions, but I can't remember when it wasn't. When my kids were teenagers, there was lots of eye rolling when I insisted that watching it was, or I should say, will be, a family event. Something about it appealed to my Unitarian heart, and I wanted to inoculate theirs. They would ask me when I would find a new tradition. My answer was when I stopped tearing up at the end of this one. While now it is a favorite of millions and is ranked the 11th best film of all time, it had a difficult birth and a long gestation. It was conceived in 1849 when Charles Dickens returned from visiting America. America disappointed him, but visits with Waldo Emerson and William Ellery Channing inspired him. Upon his return to London, he joined a Unitarian church and wrote A Christmas Carol, a Christmas story that does not mention Jesus or God. It was not about supernatural events and miracles. It was about our capacity to transform ourselves into compassionate and loving human beings. Now our tale jumps ahead nearly 100 years to when Philip Van Doren Stern spent 6 years writing a short story entitled The Greatest Gift. There is no disputing that he drew heavily from Dickens, but Stern could not find a publisher. Instead, according to Wikipedia, he sent 200 self-published copies to friends as Christmas cards in December 1943. His daughter, Marguerite Stern Robinson, recalled, "I was in the 3rd grade, and I remember delivering a few of these cards to my teachers and my friends. My father, who was himself from a mixed religious background, explained to me that while this story takes place at Christmas time, and that we were sending it as a Christmas card to our friends, it is a universal story for all people in all times. Its transformation from unpublished short story to film began when it came to the attention of Cary Grant, who convinced RKO, his movie studio, to purchase the film rights for $10,000. Eventually, RKO gave up, shelved the project, happily selling it for $10,000 to Frank Capra, who saw its possibilities. When the film was released, it opened to generally negative reviews, and it lost money at the box office. It even came to the attention of the FBI. On May 26, 1947, the Federal Bureau of Investigation issued a memo stating, with regard to the picture, It's a Wonderful Life, the substance of the film represented rather obvious attempts to discredit bankers by casting Lionel Barrymore as a Scrooge type, so that he would be the most hated man in the picture. This, according to these sources, is a common trick used by the communists. This picture deliberately maligned the upper class, attempting to show that people who had money were mean and despicable characters. Film historian Andrew Sarris observed as curious that the censors never noticed that the villainous Mr. Potter gets away with robbery without being caught or punished in any way. Considering I watched the film 50 plus times, I thought there were few insights left to be had. How wrong I was. Before my viewing last Sunday, I generally focused on the selfless service of George Bailey to his community, his willingness to speak truth to power, his unwillingness to be bought off by Potter, and by his commitment to getting Italian immigrants out of Potter's slums and into their own homes. These are all Unitarian values that resonate with me. And since there is no mention of Jesus or God, it is a Unitarian Christmas story worthy of Dickens. This time, I saw a story of transformation, which wasn't told directly in the film. The film conveys many messages beyond having faith in one another. It portrays Hollywood's view of American values 76 years ago when it was released. The framework Frank Capra used to tell the story involved historical events. The Spanish flu epidemic kills the druggist's son. The Great Depression is depicted by a run on the building and loan, scuttling George and his Mary's honeymoon. Henry Ford's efforts to, quote, grow a car, unquote, using agricultural products for industrial purposes is alluded to in George's friend Sam Wainwright's using soybeans to make plastic. During World War II, both good and bad human characteristics are explored. Henry Potter uses his position as head of the draft board to protect those of privilege and exploit the marginalized, while the rest of the community sacrifices for the war effort. Clearly, our values are transformed by the time in which we live. We only have to look at the COVID pandemic to know the truth of that. What isn't shown in It's a Wonderful Life is diversity. The film falls short of giving an accurate picture of the racial diversity of the past. It struggles with presenting a multi-dimensional story of women in America in the first half of the 20th century. The portrayal of Mary and other women in the film is the film's greatest weakness. Donna Reed brought everything she had to this role, which was considerable. But Mary isn't portrayed as a real person. Mary is presented as an ideal of Republican motherhood that centers women's roles, on domestic affairs and educating children. She does break out of that mold in many parts of the film to be a more authentic and empowered character. In the end, it is Mary who saves George. She's the one working at the grassroots level to save her family. When Clarence, on body, a guardian angel, finally shows George what the world would be like without him, this plotline takes all the agency from Mary. Without George, Mary is alone, weak, and an unfulfilled old maid, closing up the library on Christmas Eve. The portrayal of early 20th century women in It's a Wonderful Life is further complicated by its lack of dialogue with race in America. The character of Annie is a middle-aged Black woman and the Bailey's domestic worker. Her time screen amounts to about 2 of the 131 minutes of the total movie. In that short time, Annie's role, and by extension the place of Black people in this story, is presented as service to and comic relief for the white characters. Lillian Randolph, a supremely talented actor and singer, took the role she was offered, usually one-dimensional and demeaning characters. The Annie role holds to that paradigm. Annie is portrayed as a fixture for years in the Bailey family, as she is seen preparing and serving food, assisting in Harry Bailey's wedding reception, and engaging in family politics and discussions. In one scene, as George and his father sit at the dinner table deep in conversation about the future of the Bailey building and loan, Annie pauses from clearing the dishes to eavesdrop on George's reply about delaying college to continue working there. George, noticing her interest in their conversation playfully, but in a way that clarifies her inferior status in the household, invites her to drop a chair, then you'd be more comfortable and you could hear everything that's going on. The interactions between Annie and the Bailey family contain even darker themes. On the night Harry Bailey, George's brother, graduates from high school. Annie has been busy making desserts for the graduation party and dinner for the family. As Harry prepares to leave for the dance, he chases Annie around the dining room table, playfully asking her for a kiss and saying, "Annie, I'm in love with you. There's a moon out tonight." The stage directions in the screenplay depict what happened next. As he pushes her through the kitchen door, he slaps her bottom. She screams. The swinging door cuts off the noise. This assault and violation of a black woman by a white teenage boy are presented just for laughs, which is telling. Capra must have felt the World War II era audience would see this as just a playful moment and were unconcerned that Annie was seen as somewhat accepting or even welcoming of getting slapped and chased around the house by a high school boy. Just imagine the difference in perspective here. If you put a single white woman working in the same job in a black family, and the 18-year-old black male is chasing around Mary, and how an audience would have reacted to that. It does show the double standard in these constructions of gender and race. Lastly, while Frank Capra created a propaganda film for the United States government in 1944 called The Negro Soldier, which presented an inclusive history showing black involvement in U.S. wars, politics, and culture since the Revolution, a far less flattering picture of African Americans emerges when Clarence grants George's wish never to have been born. Bedford Falls, his hometown, is transformed into the vice-ridden Pottersville. Capra hints at the degradation of the town coming in the form of the black music and jazz heard pouring out of the taverns and diamond dance halls. Mary's fate as an old maid in this alternative universe is portrayed as hideously sad, yet as perfectly fine and appropriate and desirable for Annie in the real world. Unitarians today find these attitudes highly objectionable. This is not to say we have not shared them in the past, nor have we fully addressed systemic racism, and gender inequality in the present. What we can say is, since It's a Wonderful Life was released, our consciousness has been raised. We are not the same faith we were 76 years ago. And I think that's good news. So we're going to play Go Tell It on the Mountain. My closing words are by Maureen Killeran. No one is ever really ready for Christmas. If we were really all prepared, if every gift we had contemplated had been obtained, if every present was beautifully beribboned, if all the goodies our friends deserve were baked and cooled and stored just so, If each and every person we love was gathered for our celebration, if we never snapped at someone we care about, nor stopped short of being all that we could be, excuse me, if our minds were 100% loving and our hearts were 100% generous, they truly would be ready. And truly, we would not need Christmas quite so much. So come Christmas, most needed of seasons. Come with the reminder that love does not depend on perfection, but on willingness to risk connection. Come into the unready manger of our hearts that we may feel the warmth of new life and give flesh to the promise of hope that cries to bring healing into our world. Come Christmas, come love, come hope, be born in our unready hearts this Christmas season. And now, if you'll join me in the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Okay, now it's time for our conversation. And our opening conversation starter. How does Christmas transform you?